So today, our topic is going to be growth in within the organization. Is it fact or is it fiction?
Did you say gross or growth?
Growth, growth,
Growth?
like a tumor.
Growth.
Beads.
Bees?
Beads.
Beads?
Why am I like this?
Why am I like this? Oh, God. But try that again for me, Falon.
Oh,
Let's do the whole thing again. Okay, we can do
Come on,
better.
Brian.
Run. Just okay. Hey everybody, welcome back to Difficult Childhood. My name is Falon, and I am joined, as always, by my lifelong best friend and amazing co-host, Jason.
Say hey.
And today we have a longtime friend of the channel, Rebecca, joining us with some excellent commentary on the subject we're going to be discussing, which is organizational growth within the JW setup, within the JW world. Is the growth fact or fiction? What do the numbers really say?
Yeah, they're saying 8.8 million. And by the way, I am very happy to be on the channel with my two favorite women on the planet. You guys are both awesome, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun. In fact, I think I know you two collectively. It's like 60 years of collective. If you start stacking it on sequentially, that's probably cheating. Anyway,
A lot of knowing. Okay.
speaking of cheating with numbers, it is a lot of knowing. Speaking of cheating with numbers, they claim, the governing body in their reports claim that they have 8.8 million active publishers.
Is that their newest?
That's the latest number. And we know that they lie and that they're fine. They call it spiritual warfare. Maybe it would make the organization look bad if there were fewer. So I think they're probably changing I bet I'm being counted. I haven't been active in forever. And none of us are disfellowshipped that we know of.
That we know, yeah.
And even if they were, they could be counting, grave sites from COVID. I wouldn't put it past them. But I think that they are, I'm tongue in cheek, but I think that they are counting people who are inactive.
Mm-hmm.
They're not disfellowship. Let's keep that number there. It makes us look better. What do you think?
There's no hard, fast rule against it, so I don't know why. I don't know why they wouldn't. You're just discouraged.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why they did away with turning in your time. I just thought of this. Why they don't have you turn in a record of your time anymore, because the numbers are laughable.
Yeah.
Even though people routinely lie on those things. I used to. I was like, some of them.
I did.
Yeah. Especially pioneers. They would fudge it all the time, but even so, I think the numbers were silly.
Maybe we'll put that to the comments. What's the biggest fudge that you ever did on your numbers on your reporting your time? I think maybe I added 20 hours once because I just didn't go out at all. And I didn't want to get, I was a ministerial servant. I didn't want to get,
I think it was for pioneer hours. So because I had been warned so many times that I need to get my hours up. But
I just wrote down how many drinks I had instead of how many hours I went out. So it was a number that was valid.
It was a number.
Yeah.
That I reached. Did you guys used to hover your finger above doorbells?
We were talking about that recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just say
Yeah,
bing
I'm
bong.
pushing it for sure. It's definitely ringing.
No one's here.
Oh, I remember looking over my shoulder to see if my mom was watching me and doing that, like, oh no, nobody's answering. Darn it. Oh.
Shucks. That's also stuff you can't pull off now. Everybody has a video doorbell now.
Well, you can still out of frame.
Why is that guy standing by my doorbell and not ringing?
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That is true.
Well, I was kind of thinking about this, and I thought, well, if you are the governing body and you want to make it look better, eventually what's going to happen is, and I want to say that in this episode, I think we have a solid case for the 8.8 million is nowhere near that's accurate. And I think we have a lot of evidence, including verifiable outside records that really support that there's no way. So obviously you can't verify the numbers in the field service reports or the what is it, the yearly report they call it?
Annual report.
Annual, yeah. So you can't verify that. You got to take their word for it, which is crap. So if what I think will have to happen eventually, it'll become so clear that there aren't that many Jehovah's Witnesses that they're going to have to start showing a reduction. And I think they are going to try to Matthew chapter 7 this situation
We're gonna
and
spin
go,
it.
yeah, narrow and cramped is the path, and fewer are the ones choosing or finding it. And
Mhm.
that's evidence that we have the truth. What do you think?
Wheat,
Sounds
wheat
about right.
separated from the chaff.
Was that?
Wheat separated from the chaff. A further,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. And Fallon, I remember when we were kids, we had like in I remember specifically in '86, the first time I think it was probably several years later, but I was looking at the yearbook and it was like, oh, 3 point some odd million Jehovah's Witnesses. And so in our life, we saw it go up by, when we were rolling tape anyway, we saw it go up 5 million people
Right.
and plus, and that's just nowhere. I think they were pretty excited and pretty sure that was going to go on forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think just as decades were passing, and for a lot of people, they started to realize that there was these unrealistic standards that that caught up quick, and so the peak, of course, was followed by the valley. Um, yeah,
Absolutely. The number one, we're looking at this list of things we came up with. Rebecca, have you seen this too with the cart witnessing?
Oh yeah. They're always outside Nordstrom.
Right.
Always. Always.
And I see a specific type of person. Now, this is maybe because of infirmity, but I have never seen in the last that I can remember in the last 5 years anybody doing cart witnessing that wasn't advanced in age.
I have once,
Hmm.
um, and they looked miserable. They just looked miserable. Which I mean, we used to do cart witnessing, and it was terrible. It's such a waste of time. Remember, we would just like sit in the back and do crosswords.
I remember you did. I'm terrible at crosswords, but I remember I have a picture. Maybe I'll show it on the screen of you leaning forward and doing the crossword, ignoring that card. It's so funny.
Yeah, not even near it. Yeah, or we'd like wander off and get coffee and let you know.
I've done quite a bit of traveling in the last 5 years, and I've been in Europe and in all over the U.S. And I've every time I've seen, I'm not kidding, I have not seen a single person who didn't have gray hair at the carts. And it just seems to me, and this is not, I'm not trying to be insensitive to older people. We're all aging, but it seems to me that that's kind of an indicator of the organization is aging out. The
Mm-hmm.
old school believers who invested so much in the 70s, 80s, they're not going to quit. But I mean, some of them do, and bravo, I love that. I've heard so many stories of that, but I don't know. I think there's a sunk cost fallacy going on where
Yeah,
it's just so many older
yeah.
people.
It's too much. Too much.
yeah. The older ones, I think they've been actively witnessing for so long. That's just all they know. And so I feel like the cart witnessing is almost like the retirement plan for them. Like, okay, you've worked so hard all these years. Like now
Take a load off.
you
Yeah.
can, yeah, take a load off and like do some cart witnessing. And then for younger members, they're also kind of giving them an out of like, okay, you don't have to report hours. In the convention, they portray the ministry or the door to door work as almost like comical. Like we know it's not effective. People don't respond to that like they used to. So I think on both ends of the spectrum, they're kind of saying, yeah, we know things are changing.
That's interesting. So, in fairness, my observation that I'm seeing a lot of older people running the carts may not be just that now it's an older religion, but also that that's kind of the retirement plan for somebody who wants to go out and can't possibly do, the more active options. But I still think it's there. And I remember when I was in doing the carts and seeing a bigger mix. And even here locally, I don't see that. And this was from I did a motorcycle road trip from Jacksonville, Florida to Portland, Oregon, and I saw a lot of them on the way. And I didn't see,
Mm-hmm.
I think probably 5 separate, cart witnessing setups, and they were all older people. So I think that's a contributing factor. But you make a fair point. It's probably not partially that it's a good option for older people.
Have they acknowledged that door to door is not effective?
There was Yeah, Falon.
Oh, just in the district convention from this summer, and we do cover that in our video with Chaka. So if you haven't seen that from just a few weeks back, check it out. Um, but the way that they portray the door to door work, they follow this couple who learn the truth, get involved in the door to door work. Um, and as they're learning the truth, the music is very like poignant in the background, very, emotional. Well, then once they progress to the point of actually engaging in the door to door ministry, suddenly the music is almost like very cartoonish. They're meeting all these like strange and funny characters at the door. Um, and of course they're like kind of feeling dejected because it's just not effective. And it was almost like the organization was basically acknowledging that, like, yeah, we know it's tough out there.
Hmm.
You
Very,
have
very
to.
different feel from a lot of
Yeah, because
previous
like I feel like
shows.
not even very long ago they were like, we'll never do away with door to door. It's our bread and butter. It's what Jesus prescribed, and interesting.
That is interesting, and they had this set up where there's this woman who basically was, in a park looking upset, and then there's other one. So I don't remember if it was the same one, but somebody's basically using their dog in the park to start up a conversation with somebody in the park. So it's like, talk to your friends, talk to them, and use your connections, and that's how you can bring in all the hipster population, which is what they were showing on there.
Pretty much. Oh man.
Well, the next one I thought was kind of interesting was the XJW subreddit. And I think there's a consistent increase there. When I joined it at about 5 or 6 years ago, it was in the 80,000s. And now I believe it's over 100,000, if not real close to that. So that is growing, not hugely, but it also, I see a lot of times people are going on the XJW subreddit and they're saying, oh, this was great. This really helped me with my waking up process, but I can't really do this anymore. I kind of need to focus on other areas of life. So I'm dropping out. I'm sorry, I'm reducing the number of us, but I see that all the time. So I think it's kind of a way station for your departure. It's a rest stop rather for your departure. And it's so it isn't all the people who have filed through there.
No, and then you have to account for people like me and Fallon who aren't on even in that
Right.
on the platform.
Oh,
Right.
that's a good point.
But who have left.
Yeah, let me look
I guess I should, just to bolster the numbers.
Well. Okay, so here I have the numbers. It is currently 102,000 members on the XJW subreddit, and I'm quite certain it was just below 80,000, maybe 78,000 when I joined a few years ago. And
What was that, 2018?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
The next point that we were going to discuss is how there was a theme within the organization, roughly from like the 70s through like the early 2000s. And they always called it the gift of singleness. If you were a JW that couldn't, or for whatever reason wouldn't find a mate, or someone suitable to marry, they would talk about cultivating the gift of singleness, or how noble it was to stay single for Jehovah. Heard that a lot. Basically, they were saying, if you're an outcast, please don't leave. If you can't find somebody to marry, don't marry a worldly person. Just enjoy the gift of singleness, and eventually somebody will come along. But it was a nicer way of saying that. But eventually that theory kind of caught up to them, because all the members that really took hold of that lifestyle and just committed themselves almost in the way a nun would commit to the Catholic Church, they cut themselves out of a whole generation of born-in witnesses, because those people never started families within the organization.
Right. Right. Or they got married maybe later in life when it was past ideal time for having kids. I mean, they're very much, they strike me as a fortune teller who gets mugged. They just did not see this coming. Like,
how could they have seen it coming?
They didn't see the internet coming. They didn't see the information age coming, that people would stop coming in from door to door.
Remember, they also were not just encouraging singleness, but even among married. When the Jeremiah book came out, they were like,
Rebecca, I apologize. Could you restart that? Because some idiot decided to remove his mufflers outside my window there.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, like this is a huge truck. Go ahead, start that again, would you?
I just remember when it was around the time the Jeremiah book came out. I don't remember why. Was Jeremiah married? Did he get married? I don't know. But they were encouraging even married couples, young married couples, not to have kids. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So not just singleness, but also no kids. If you can, focus on Jehovah, focus on your ministry, have babies later in the new system. And problematic for them, but also for those poor couples who a lot of them desperately wanted kids, and now they've aged out and aren't gonna see a paradise.
Right.
Anyway.
It's such a it's kind of a tragedy. They just put people's put people's lives on hold. They put their holes on hold. That's basically what they did that too. Man, I got a lot of editing, dude. It's all my fault.
I'm so sorry. Put their holes on hold.
Maybe we'll leave it in. No, but they did this, and then they didn't see that. Oh, wait a minute, we're not going to be able to get new people in with the preaching work.
They thought it would. Yeah, they'd keep getting them in.
And I thought too, kind of like in this same stream of thought, I thought about this earlier today. A pattern that I've noticed with couples that were at Bethel. When I was a teenager, I knew several couples that had served at Bethel for multiple years. And by the time that they were released from their assignment in Bethel and returned to their home congregation, whether they were released or whether they chose to leave or whatever, it wasn't that they were too maybe physically old that they couldn't have had children, but that kind of season of life was just over or wrapping up. They weren't in a place where they were, planning that far ahead anymore. And I've noticed in the last few years, just watching people online or talking to friends who have siblings that are, still serving at Bethel, things like that. It seems like they are keeping married couples in shorter amounts of time. They're not keeping married couples on assignment at the world headquarters for such long stints. And I wonder if that is because by releasing them from their assignment or by turning them loose earlier, it gives them time to return to their home congregations and still start a family
and have babies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and create that next generation of born in. And if you're born to a Bethelite couple, that's you're locked in. That's going to be like a really strong rooted household to raise a child in. So I have to wonder if that's connected.
Yeah, I feel like they're dismissing people really willy-nilly, but that probably comes into account.
It's probably a strategy. Yeah, that's interesting.
They don't do anything for nothing.
Right.
They blunder a lot, but they don't. Yeah, when they're really trying.
They do. Yeah.
In all of this, it can be kind of it's our theories. We think this, we think that. We can use common sense. But number 4 here, it's just a matter of public record.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way of getting around this. In the 70s to the 2000s, they were not selling Kingdom Halls unless they had a new Kingdom Hall being built on the spot or in a nearby location. They were never selling Kingdom Halls to consolidate. That was their heyday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I was reading these numbers, it was kind of like shocking to me that even in the last 13 years, the total number of Kingdom Halls has been reduced by almost half, which is crazy. So the total number now is almost the same as it was in 1990, which just makes you feel like, well, all the growth from 1990 to 2024, like, where did it all go?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when shortly after I left, so I'm going to say 2015 or 2016, I was talking to my mom, and I hadn't officially like made my stand that I didn't want to go back. So we were still, in communication. anyway, she mentioned that they were redrawing the border, um, the boundary for who attended which congregation based on your physical location. And I asked her why. And she said, well, from what I understand, they're just trying to lessen the drive time for people that live farther out, trying to evenly distribute members to whatever the closest congregation is. So she was interpreting it as, like a kindness that was being showed to lighten the load on the people that had a bigger commute to get to the meetings. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, then it was less than a year later after they took 3 congregations, redrew the boundaries, and smushed all those people into 2 congregations, and then sold off the extra Kingdom Halls. So I'm
Right.
sure that was being done, on a much larger scale, and that's what accounts for this large liquidation of Kingdom Halls.
Even by their own admission, they did not care about people's commute. That was not ever their. Remember, like 3 years ago, at the convention, there was like a video about how to respond to if you're reassigned, if you're suddenly redistributed.
Yeah.
And the older sister, who reminded me so much of my mom, but she was like, well, we have to do what we're told, and well, the two younger ones are like, "Ah, my aunt goes there, I love her, and it's so far away, it's 45, and she's like, well, just like
She smacked her lips a lot.
just like that. So like they did not care, and so they made a whole production about you do it anyway.
Yeah. I think that was just my mom's interpretation of it because,
Yeah,
like most good,
Sure.
like JW wives, they
yeah,
just always wanted to like assume the best. And
I'm sure my
yeah,
mom thought the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah, like news outlets on each side slant everything to match their
Mhm.
particular views. Jehovah's Witnesses always slant everything to be like, and that's why it's a rich blessing from the organization. You're like, okay, I don't know that that's what happened, but all right, buddy.
A
And
rich blessing.
these numbers, though, like you said, Fallon, it goes 1990, 60,000 Kingdom Halls. 2000, 95,000 Kingdom Halls. 2010, 110,000 Kingdom Halls. And then 13 years later, in 2023, Jehovah's Witnesses have approximately 64,000 Kingdom Halls, brick and mortar, actual Kingdom Halls. We're not talking congregations, halls. So there's just no way that you have the same number or that you've done any growth at all if you're looking at half of the buildings.
Mm,
And this is why we think that they are lying about their number 8.8 million, because I know you can certainly do multiple Kingdom Halls, but it I've not only heard reports from people, who I know firsthand go, I went back to the Kingdom Hall and wow, that was sparse. A lot of people must have been on Zoom. Wow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't
No,
think so.
no. Yeah,
Yeah.
anecdotally, I've heard that there's just like rows and rows of empty, even with all these mergers and
mhm.
If
I
you
believe it.
it's just the fact
Especially
that if
after COVID, people,
yeah,
that mindset is just different. Like they don't want to
they don't
come physically.
do. Mm-mm,
When they started almost like begging people, like, please physically come back to the meetings, I thought,
mm-hmm,
they're in trouble.
mm-hmm.
Um, but we also didn't just see it with like local Kingdom Halls. I was thinking about some things that my mom had told me um, right after I stopped going when they made their big transition with the world headquarters from Brooklyn to Warwick. So she when she relayed this information to me, she was like, they're moving out of Brooklyn. They're too big for Brooklyn. So they built this massive compound in Warwick, New York, and we're just growing so much. Like they need more space, more space, more space. All right. And so it was portrayed to me almost like, donations are pouring in, this massive growth, and that's what's funding Warwick. Now, I will say I don't know what Warwick cost, but based on every video / photo I've ever seen of it, I'm sure was
Mm-hmm.
unbelievably expensive.
Gorgeous property. Just the basic land is stunning.
Gorgeous. Absolutely. But I think it's interesting to note a couple of things, and these are all public records, articles that have been covered in like the New York Business Journal, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. So the Warwick Project was started in 2013. Something else that's interesting that happened in 2013 is a law firm. The most famous member of this real estate firm is Jared Kushner. He's most notably recognized as being Donald Trump's son-in-law. His firm purchased a huge block of the Brooklyn properties from the Jehovah's Witness organization for $375 million, which is a lot of check. The Warwick project was completed in 2016. What happened in 2016? That same firm, Columbia Heights Associates, bought another block of those properties for $340 million. So 340, 375.
Almost $750 million.
$500 million.
Yeah, we're almost at 3/4. It's nuts.
Yeah. So, and those things perfectly coincide with the beginning and the completion of that project. So even if there was growth, I don't think you could accurately portray it to people like, oh, we were just growing so much. That's what funded these huge projects.
Donations. Yeah.
No, I was an account servant. That kind of money was not coming in from the local congregation, except for the one time when they went in and announced that they were going to take all the cash from all the congregations that were in savings and hold it for you in an account that you'll have
Oh,
at
right.
the Watchtower's bank. Basically, they were pretending they're like a bank. It'll be on deposit there, and when you need it, just go ahead and write us, and then we'll go ahead and give you the money to repave your parking lot or whatever you need. And so they yanked all that money. Other than that, there was no big influx of cash.
Yeah, I remember you when you were the account servant emptying out the drawers like a button.
Mm-hmm. A
Rolling.
button. Yeah.
Like, yeah, some
That's
random
enough.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there were times when it was $15 at the Sunday meeting, and it's like, well, I think we spent that much on electricity on the air conditioning for this building
Yeah,
today.
a crumpled check from some old lady for
Oh, yeah. I
20
mean,
bucks. Yeah.
bless her, but yeah. And so I think it's interesting. We see that we can't really trust their numbers because we know, I mean, like just looking at Jeffrey Jackson, for example, under oath was willing to lie. That's just one example of many. So I don't think their numbers are truly 8.8 million, but the sale of Kingdom Halls is a matter of public record, and that's why we have specific concrete numbers on that stuff. And so I guess it brings up the question of what happened in the last 13 years, because they were at 110,000 Kingdom Halls, and then now they're at 64,000. And I think several things played into it. What do you think? What either one of you think kind of contributed to that huge attrition or shrinkage?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just the birth of the communications age, just the internet. I mean, that if I had to choose one thing that I think would be the toppling factor in the Watchtower organization, it would definitely be that. There's so much more transparency between members and people able to share their stories or discuss things that they have questions about that don't make sense from the organization. So I think just a mass understanding of what it truly is has suppressed that growth since the internet was available.
Yeah, makes sense. In the last 13 years, I think the really big contributing factor, like you said, is the information age. But they tried to hitch their wagon to the internet, and it didn't work because they did JW broadcasting. And I've heard multiple people, particularly content creators, for among the JW activism, they've mentioned that doing that just made everybody see the man behind the curtain, and that they weren't special, and in fact that they're really, really off-putting and weird.
Yeah.
I remember watching the first few JW broadcasts, and I was a ministerial servant at the time, and Rebecca and I, we were married at the time. We were just cringing watching those.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember I said to my mom, I was like, it's televangelism. And they said they would never do this. This is the 700 Club. Do you not
Yeah.
like? And she's like, I saw this kind of look in her face, like,
Oh.
but also, then she was like, no, 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 this is different for reasons I don't know.
And two, I think over the last couple of decades, they've been in so much hot water with things that aren't necessarily directly related to doctrine. Um, I hear a lot of people say, well, you're never going to find a religion or a church where you agree with 100% of their doctrine. So even if I don't agree with maybe this little part of it or this little part of it, overall, I'm still on board. I'm staying in. But now, the last several years, decades or so, they're in more trouble with like CSA cases, more people willing to share their story, people that feel emboldened because they have found people with similar trauma on the internet again, more human rights violations, more stuff with the courts, um, inflicting mental trauma on people, emotional abuse, things like that. So I think people are starting to see, okay, there could be some shady stuff going on that has nothing to do with the doctrinal part of it.
Hmm.
I don't want to be a part of this either.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think also up till recent years, they've flown under the radar,
Mm.
as a destructive organization because they've stayed out of politics, they've stayed out of academia. But now the internet, you see it all. You see it all, and they do it to themselves with their broadcast. So now they can't hide anymore. And I think now people are they're just more visible.
That's really on point. For a long time, they kind of just like minded their own business.
They were just like innocuous, the kind of annoying people on Saturday. No one saw them as destructive and dangerous, pernicious, and all the things. Now you can't miss it.
Yeah. I think the Australian Royal Commission seems like that kicked that off.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Norway, with them losing their status as their charitable status, that added more. It was no longer just, not that it wasn't a horrific thing on its own. Literally, Jehovah's Witnesses, we did an episode on that. They come up as number 2 with the number of accusations of CSA, second only to the Catholic Church that has like 980 million members. So
That's
no, they
impressive.
have the worst. Yeah, that's impressive. If it weren't so
That's hard
disgusting.
to do. Yeah. Wow.
uh, it's
That's outrageous.
so much more that it is just completely apparent to people. You leave the front door and then they just Google and they go, oh goodness, okay, no thanks.
If you're even inclined, like most people
Oh yeah,
don't
true.
care. No one's
Hmm.
even looking twice at those stupid cards. I look at them more than anyone because I'm like,
Is that how you flip them off with your index finger for the channel? There you go,
I'm
Falon.
shaking my
Yeah.
fist.
Oh, I see.
Exactly.
Well, we're also talking about what's happened in the last 13 years, what the next 13 years, the next 25 years is going to bring for this organization. I really feel like they're going to become a much more fringe organization, maybe even having to isolate themselves a lot more from the world just to maintain their current members. I'm not saying going full on Mennonite, but uh, kind of that direction. Maybe even making excessive or a lot of internet access for members not workable.
Huh.
You just have to control the information. I know. What do you guys see this doing over the next couple decades?
I almost feel like the pendulum could swing either way. I feel like
Exactly.
they could go like almost Mennonite, like, really double down on like separate us from the world physically. Or I feel like they could go very, very
Right.
techie, like almost like a virtual church
Mm,
where they liquidate all the kingdom halls. And I just could maybe see them framing it like, oh, well, in countries where it's too far or it's too dangerous for members to make it physically to the Kingdom Hall, you can bring the Kingdom Hall in your home
Mm-hmm.
full time. Kind of like how it was with Zoom during the pandemic, trying to maybe like normalize that. But I mean, I could see it going either way.
I think that's more likely. The trajectory now is so like so lax and so appeasing to everybody. Like pants, sure, for the ladies, yeah. Beards, yeah, fine. I feel like they're trying to make it as palatable as possible. Not, I don't know. I don't see them doing the super strict insular thing.
Well, this is how you can tell we don't rehearse, because I did not expect you guys to say that, and I think you're absolutely right. I think I'm wrong on that one, because it makes more sense to try to make it more palatable. You're going to lose a lot of people by trying to get everybody to really revert to an early version. And
Especially
as
young people, and
right,
old people are dying.
that's what I was going to say. As the older people are passing away,
Yeah.
part of life, it's you get some bad reaction. We had some reactions to the beards and to the pants for women from older elders. Well,
Mm-hmm.
hey, in my day and back in 68, 75, we didn't do this sort of thing, and then we've invested all this being a certain way all this time. As those people do naturally pass away, I think there's going to be that that's it's going to become more accessible for leadership to do more and more things to make themselves look better and more palatable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to pretend like I just came with this great idea
And
and I wasn't completely wrong with my prediction. This
no,
is
I
why
mean
most fortune tellers are women.
that's the thing. No one will go for it. I don't think. Even, I mean, they could be obtuse enough to try it, but I kind of
One,
don't.
two, something that just popped into my head. It seems like as individual members of the governing body either die off or Toni Morrison self off, um, they're slowly weaving in not young brothers, but younger brothers to
Yeah.
take their place. It seems like the governing body helpers are getting a little
Mhm.
younger, a little more, I don't want to say trendy, but
Yeah.
compared to like Samuel Hurd, yeah, a little more trendy. Um, I noticed that, and I have to
Very
wonder, like, are
bro.
you weaving
Am I
in
right?
those kind of younger people to just, when the time is right, like completely steer the ship a different direction,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
a little more hip?
Sanderson style. I feel like he's poised to take over.
Oh, yeah, I think he's already the king of the governing body.
He is, right?
Yeah, I think he's the head guy. He's
He
he's
seems like
he's
it.
I've heard very from people who there was one interview of a guy who was working in the early days of JW Broadcasting when he first had gotten in. Not early days, but it was like around 2017 or 2016, and he was really, he was bossy and not pleasant, and apparently a very difficult. Like he had a wrong tie on for the
Oh
the
yeah.
green screen behind him or blue
Mm-hmm.
screen behind him, and it wasn't working, and they were getting some of the graphics over his tie, and he'd recorded the whole thing, and then somebody said somebody told him, okay, we got to re-record this, and he went
Lost it.
off
Yeah.
like a producer would, just yell or a talent would in
He
Hollywood, just
bailed them.
yelling at people.
Mm-hmm.
Third hand story, but
I
second
want a
hand,
variety of
third
ties in
person.
my green room with my Avion water.
And some fizzy water.
So I'm going to put the comment up on the screen. We got a comment from somebody who said, hey, you guys think there aren't as many Jehovah's Witnesses, but you haven't given us any reason you think that. You're just spreading negative information about Jehovah's Witnesses. And so they actually inspired this episode. And this is why we went and said, you know what? They're right. We weren't doing our research. So let's go do some research on this. Even though the other episode they're commenting out, that wasn't what that episode was about. We made some offhand comments about how we thought there were fewer JWs. So it inspired us to do this episode and to really research this. And I appreciate the comment. So we'll pop it up on the screen. But yeah, that's what led us to this episode. So we definitely appreciate the comments. Even if you are saying something against what we're saying, it kind of keeps us honest and also gets us to do more research.
Yeah. Yeah, we love that. And we mentioned this on our teaser, a previous short that we put out. We did set up a SpeakPipe account, which you can log on and leave a voice message about any subject, but we'd love to hear your feedback on this one too. We like to actually hear your voices. Just helps us know you better, feel like we know you better. So if you have a point you want to make or you want to weigh in on this topic, feel free to give us a click and leave us a message.
Yeah, it's going to be speakpipe.com/difficult childhood. And there is a link in the description for you.
Future is bright. We're taking flight from shadows to sunlight. Everything's alright.
You should fly from Oregon and I'll fly from West Virginia and we'll meet like in the middle, like Dallas or
Yeah.
something. And we'll go undercover as like a married couple and we'll attend the convention and we'll just pretend that like, this is our first experience, like our first convention we've ever attended. And we'll just see,
Yeah.
like how people interact with us and we'll collect all this data for an episode and we'll call it like Undercover Brother
For science.
or something.
One of our ideas was that we would go and we would pretend that Robbie is our Bible student.
We're fixing him.
We saved them.
He was one of
Saved
the Crips and the Bloods, folks.
Well, and the Bloods.
He came from a Crip mama and a Blood daddy.
Oh,
Wow. It's a classic
classic tale.